ignite what has been set asunder.
We are TFR, Truth Frequency Radio.
Welcome to Phoenix Rising Radio. Now is the time to lift your mind higher. Now is the time to rise above. I am your host, Phoenix, and welcome to tonight's broadcast. Yeah, good evening and welcome everyone. This is Phoenix. I hope you guys are doing well, and I hope that thus far your week has gone well for you. Tell you what, I have to be honest with you, I never get tired of that intro. I love the Rolling Stones. Rolling Stones were a great band. You got to admit, Mick and the boys, they could knock it out. Fantastic. I listen to that song, the intro, I love it. Every time I see Keith Richards like banging away on his Telecaster, or excuse me, it was a Telecaster. He didn't play a Stratocaster. He plays a Tele, and oh man, great band. You have to admit it. So many good songs that they did for so many years. I mean, who can beat the Rolling Stones? Yeah. I know we got some competition out there. Yeah, I like a lot of other bands, Led Zeppelin, and a few others. But we won't go into that. This isn't about music. This is about tonight, and tonight is Thursday, January 25th, 2018. Now, where are we? We're just beginning 2018, and things are really rolling along here. I want to bring up a topic tonight. Tonight's topic will be something that we've talked about before, we've touched upon, and that is Project Mockingbird. Project Mockingbird. And if you're listening to Phoenix Rising Radio and you listen to Truth Frequency Radio, you are a purveyor of the truth, a seeker of the truth, and you're looking for the truth in all things. Project Mockingbird, there's a truth there that works on anti-truth. And we're going to talk about it. But the main topic about Project Mockingbird, and the question I have for you, and it may surprise you, is this. Are you listening to me right now, a tool of the deep state? Are you being used by the deep state? Now, most people would instantly say, Phoenix, absolutely not. No, I'm all for truth. I research this stuff. I know this. I know that. I would never be a tool for the deep state. Yeah, well, we're going to talk about that because you may be surprised at the answer. And what we find out here as we dig into this deep tonight on Phoenix Rising Radio for the next 2 hours, Project Mockingbird, where it came from, what it's about, and what's happening right now. I mean, right now. This is relevant. We're going to start back at the beginning of this, and we're going to bring it up to where we are right this day. And, a lot of people have heard about Mockingbird. They think they are pretty well versed on Project Mockingbird. Some of you listening are probably like, well, what are you talking about? Never heard of it. Well, we're gonna get into that. We'll get into that, and it will become very apparent as we talk in the evening, as we go through this discussion and this expose on this information. Why I pose the question here at the beginning of the program: Are you listening to this program? Are you a tool of the deep state? I talk about the few who control the many. How do they control the many? How is this done? The few who control the many through fear, through images. I've talked about this before. We go back to the allegory of Plato's cave, and that he laid out in the Republic. And the allegory of the cave, Plato describes a situation where he's describing humanity, and very, very brilliant philosopher, talking about how mankind is controlled. Truly, it's probably the first expose that was widely recorded and published on the fact that the few and how the few control the many. And he gave this allegory out in the vision of a cave. And what he described was, imagine if humanity or society were human beings that were actually trapped in a cave. They were trapped in this cave and didn't even really realize it. And they were in a position that all they could see is in one direction. They couldn't see behind them because they were restrained. Now, behind them was a large fire. They kept them warm and they received food. They got what they needed to live and to keep sustaining their lives while they were held captive in the cave, but they couldn't look behind them. There was something behind them they couldn't see. And what was behind them was a large fire. And this large fire that was burning in the cave, gave them warmth, cooked their food, whatever. It sustained them. But they couldn't see that it was a fire. They knew it was warm. But what happened was there were a few people, those who had the people contained and stoke the fire. What they would do is they would tell stories and tell the people in the cave what was going on, and they would illustrate these stories by shadows that they would cast on the wall in front of the people. And how they would do this is they'd wear these large wooden masks that made them look very scary and bigger than they really were, and they would tell these stories and they would dance and move with these images in front of the fire, and it would cast the shadow onto the wall that the people who were held captive in the cave could see, and it would terrify the people. And they kept them in the cave, and it got to the point they didn't even have to keep them captive. They didn't even have to keep them bound. The people were so in fear because of the images, the flickering images they saw on the cave wall, they would not dare to go outside of the cave to see the light of the true light of the day and smell the true air and the freshness and the freedom that was there, because they were so spellbound by the images and it was so believable to them. Now, the modern image of this is the man cave, Pluto's man cave. And Plato's man cave. I said Pluto. I'm thinking I've got astrology on my mind. And we'll talk about that in a minute. Pluto's and Plato's man cave. Oh, man, the deep underworld. Oh, how things are connected. Anyway, Plato's cave, Plato's man cave today, the widescreen TV. People see the flickering images on TV, and they're so influenced. People are so influenced by the images on television and the things they hear on radio and music and all of this. How can that be? And is it true? Do you even notice it? Oh, yeah, you notice it all right. Because I will guarantee you, I don't care who you are. I mean, this goes even for me. I don't care who you are. There is something that you own. Maybe you don't own it right now, but you have in the past that you bought, that you strive for, that you couldn't wait till you had this thing. You could not rest until you had the money in your hands to buy item X. Let's call it item X, whatever it was. It was something that you desired. You thought about it. You dreamed about it. You flipped through magazine pages. Or scanned through, Amazon.com or whatever, and looked at this particular thing, and you couldn't wait to get it. And then you got it, and nothing. You realized that you really didn't need it, and it wasn't what you really thought it was. And maybe you don't even have it anymore. It sits in the corner, and it's something that maybe you hang clothes on now, and you're like, wow, I spent a lot of money on that. Why did I really buy that? Well, there's an answer to that. The flickering images on Plato's man cave. The advertising agencies, the power of advertising told you needed it. You would be happy if you had that thing. You'd be sexy. If you buy that, man, you will be so sexy. People will love you. You'll be a manly man. You'll be a gorgeous woman. You'll be a sexy woman. You'll be whatever. You'll be a good parent. You'll be a good grandparent. Your grandchildren will love you if you buy this for them, Grammy. And people, get caught into these things without thinking about it. That's advertising. That is the psychology behind advertising. I've touched upon this before. We've talked about it before. The power of Fifth Avenue in New York. And when I say Fifth Avenue, that's where all the ad agencies back in the day were located. And they discovered something, and they started doing something. They changed things with advertising. They took advertising of products into a new level. Instead of advertising something for its values, let's say, and I've used this before, I'll use it again, biscuits. Okay? Let's say there's a certain type of biscuit mix that, is really good. And at one point, the advertisers and the companies would advertise, let's say it was Full Moon biscuits. Full Moon biscuit mix will make the best biscuits because they taste really good, the ingredients are pure, and they cook really well. That was the advertising. Something along those lines. They outdo the other brand because their biscuit mix is the best biscuit mix because it tastes good. Well, someone came up with the idea, and the way to go with all of this was a different way. And it became the prevalent way. And all of a sudden, Full Moon biscuits weren't the biscuits that taste the best, and they were the easiest to make and the best ingredients. All of a sudden, you saw, instead of that being advertised, you saw a woman, with dressed real nice, and a man all happy, smiling, and it was Full Moon biscuit mix will get you the man you love. Full Moon biscuit mix will make your children love you and know that you're a good mother. Full Moon biscuit mix will make you happy and romantic, or whatever. They veered away from the truth of the product and went into sensualizing it. And when I say sensualizing, I don't mean just like romance and sexuality, just all the senses. If you buy X product, you will be this. You'll be handsome. You'll be lovely. You'll be sexy. You'll be strong. You'll be seen successful. Your children will love you. Your grandchildren will love you. Your husband, your wife, whoever will love you. You'll be the best of the best if you own X. And that's where the advertising went. And man, it is so successful. It is so successful. You see this, and people laugh about this. The people behind the masses who are held in Plato's man cave today, they think it's a joke. Remember when the big thing, I mean, it was a huge thing about sneakers. I guess it still is a big thing, like sneakers, like tennis shoes, they used to call them basketball shoes, skate shoes, whatever. These shoes were made so cheaply. I remember, I think it was the product, I think it was the Air Jordans. I think that was it. And it actually was released years ago that they were made in Japan. They were overseas import. And a pair of these shoes, and this was back in like the 80s, I guess it was, these shoes cost to manufacture in the factory because of the cheap slave labor, literally slave labor, and the cheap products and everything in overseas production. A pair of these shoes cost like around $1 or $2 to produce. I mean, it was cheap. And they were selling them for over $100 in the United States. And it got to the point, the advertising was so effective with this emotional manipulation of people's minds. There were reports, and you can search this out if you're not familiar with this, you can do an internet search, where people were killed on the street, gunned down and knifed, not for their wallets, for their shoes. People were actually killing each other in some of the areas, the urban areas of the United States, taking shoes from their dead victim because of the effectiveness of this mind control. They were taking shoes that were so cheaply made that it cost, less than $5 to make these shoes. They were selling them for over $100 here in the United States. And they were putting a value on these through advertising that it messed with people's heads. Because what I'm describing to you is insanity. The fact that one human being would kill another human being for a pair of cheap sneakers. Why would someone do that? Because they were influenced by the media, by the advertising forces, that those shoes would make them happy. That those shoes would give them power. That those shoes would show that they're successful. And you see this. You see people who have done this to themselves, and they get caught in this trap, and it's not their fault. They're victims of this. And I want to point this out, that they're victims of this. And I want to emphasize the victim aspect of this, because later on I'm going to lay something out that you may realize you're a victim also, and possibly a tool of the deep state. And it's not your fault. It's not your fault. I'm not pointing my finger at individuals tonight. I'm exposing a system that has made people into victims, not only victims, but unwilling assets of the deep state. That they do things that sane individuals would not do. People have been influenced by the media, by television, by videos, music videos. Oh, and that's a big one right there, because you put the beats with all of this and the music and all of that, you really get into people's psyches with this. And it has caused people to do things against their will. They may think it's their will, but they were influenced into thinking this way, and they took action that was potentially harmful to their fellow man, potentially harmful to this nation or your nation, wherever you may be listening. I'm in the United States here, and I'm talking about this nation, and this is a big, big deal right here in the United States right now. Am I talking about fake news? Oh, yeah. I'm talking about fake news. Fake news. But see, even that term, fake news, man, they're playing with that and they're playing with people's minds. We're going to get into the specifics of this evening. This is a science. This is a scientific thing that has been done to us. Now, you'll notice I didn't say you. I said us because it's been done to me also. I can't think right offhand of something that I purchased or did because of media right offhand. But I'm sure somewhere at some point there was something I desired that I really didn't need, but I fell into it. But this is bigger than this. We're not talking about products. We're not talking about automobiles or clothing or crazy things like that. And these guys are good at this. They make billions of dollars off of this. This is a big deal. The psychological manipulation of the masses. And you take the psychological manipulation that's posed through advertising, the eye candy that we have now through television, the full senses of this, because think of the birth of all of this. They began with radio. Well, they actually began with print. And we could go back to the psychological manipulation of print through the pamphleteers, the pamphlets, the booklets, books that were written, and political cartoons. Political cartoons and political artwork were, fascinating. I am very fascinated by political cartoons that go back many, many years. And things that appeared in newspapers, just one small pane, one image that was inked out with a few words on it. So powerful. So powerful. And this propaganda, if you will, some of it truthful, some exposed things, some very subtle, was very effective for good and for bad. And the power of this, we call it today the power of the meme war. Oh yeah, Kek. Welcome to Kekistan. We're talking about Kek, we're talking about the memes, we're talking about meme warfare. Meme warfare. We're talking about psychological warfare. We're talking about the powers that be, the deep state, dipping into your psyche and making you do things that you didn't even realize. And this goes back, man, we're talking, this is nothing new. This is nothing new. We're talking about historical replication. I talk about with the matrix of information, historical replication. And when I say historical, let's go back. Let's see, how far can we take this back? Oh, that's right, like the 5th century BC. Yeah, let's go back there for some historical replication. And how about Sun Tzu's Art of War? Sun Tzu's Art of War, written in the 5th century BC. Which is basically, if you've never read it, I hope you do. It's been convoluted. You can find lengthy, wordy volumes on it, on all types of things. But it's very precise. It's only 13 chapters long. 13 chapters of basically bullet points. I think the first... I remember the first copy of The Art of War I had when I was in the military was, very small. It was like 4 inches high, 4 by maybe like 5, maybe a quarter, 3/8 inches thick. Not a lot. I mean, it's basically 13 chapters with bullet points in them. A very concise thing. And one of the interesting things in the beginning of this, if you're not familiar with it, if you are, you'll know what I'm talking about. The different chapters that are in here. Here, let me pull mine out right here. Okay. Chapter 1 is laying plans, and chapter 2 is waging war. Chapter 3, attack by stratagem or plan of attack. Chapter 4 is positioning. Chapter 5, directing. And Chapter 6, illusion and reality. Okay, illusion and reality. And it goes on and on. Well, we won't run through all the chapters. You can check it out yourself, The Art of War. But right in the very beginning, in laying plans, if you go to point number 10 or verse number 10 of The Art of War, in laying plans, the calculations, your initial estimations, detailed assessment and planning, you will see an interesting sentence. And it says, all warfare is based on deception. All warfare is based on deception. You've heard me say before, and you've heard this, that the first casualty of war is always the truth. And again, speaking of historical replication and going back to the 5th century, Sun Tzu's Art of War, all warfare is based on deception. Psychological warfare, deceiving your opponent. And there is a war going on right now. There is, some say, some claim, and I have to agree with them, a second revolution of the United States, a second American Revolution happening right now. And this is war. Warfare of the deep state and warfare of people who are standing up and saying, you know what? Enough is enough. We'll talk more about this and the supporting aspects of this astrologically and get into Operation Mockingbird when we return in more detail. So don't go away, because you're going to hear some things tonight maybe you've never heard before. I think you will. Bye.
You are now tuned into the truth frequency.
Your protection from deception. TLR.
Truth Frequency Radio.
There's something happening here, but what it is ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there, telling me I got to beware. I think it's time we stop, children. What's that sound? Everybody look what's going down.
Yeah, what's going down? We are back talking about Operation Mockingbird this evening. Operation Mockingbird. Exactly what is that? And how does that affect you? How does that affect me? How does it affect this nation and the world? This affects the entire world. And, you know, I was saying before we went to break here about how we're really in the second American Revolution. It's happening right now. It's happening right now. People who listen to Truth Frequency Radio, people who are seekers of the truth by listening to alternative media, are aware of this. This is a war. Are there shots being fired? No, thank God. You know, we have apparently progressed to the point in our humanity that it hasn't gotten to that the way it was in 1776, 1777, etc. And what happened here on the North American continent, specifically what is now the United States, at that time the 13 colonies. There was bloodletting, there was blood. The famous shot heard around the world, and I referenced this on Tuesday because QAnon put out in one of his posts about the shot heard around the world, and this would be a week to remember. And that was in reference, it is speculated, to the first American Revolution. I say first American Revolution because I do believe we're in the second American Revolution. And in the same way that the first American Revolution was by a small handful of patriots, a small handful of individuals who said, you know what, enough is enough. Enough of the abuses by the king. Enough of the abuses by his army, the British Army, the redcoats that were here occupying and in charge of the colonies at that time. Taxation without representation was a cry. And a small handful, 3% of the population, stood up and said, you know what, we're going to do something different. This was led by Benjamin Franklin, and he had a secret group of people called the Associators who met, and they planned and formed the militias and planned that if they could not get resolution by petitioning the king, that they would oppose potentially the government of England, the king, and demand independence. And they did. And, the American Revolution, if you're not familiar with it, make yourself familiar with it, because the Second American Revolution is happening right now. There is a war going on, and it's been building. Unfortunately, there is a bigger dynamic to this. There was a group of people, there is a group of people who want the American nation, the republic that was formed in 1776, to be no more. Because in their eyes, it's way too much freedom, baby. You can't be saying what you want. You can't have the liberty to stand up for your rights. You can't have the liberty to be able to defend yourself from harm. They want things to be more totalitarian. They want things to be the way they were in the former Soviet Union. Back in the days of Lenin and Stalin. That's what they want. And what happened, and I've described this before, you had a group of people who were young, they were radicalized, they wanted to change things, they felt that, they needed to change the world, and they were highly influenced by forces from the former Soviet Union and communist China into communistic idealism, and they wanted to overthrow the United States government and take away capitalism, to take away our freedoms. They wanted to instill hardcore rule. And they felt, and they were taught, and they were lied to, that if they did this, that they would have special position. Oh yeah, they'd get rid of this old republic. They would destroy all of this, but they would be like in positions of power. Kind of like, have you ever seen The Hunger Games? Or read the book, The Hunger Games? I guess there's multiple ones. And different books, different movies about how you have an elite group that basically lives in these beautiful, well-maintained and well-provisioned areas. They have everything in the lap of luxury. And then you have the common folk who do all the work, and they live in these outlying areas, and they're basically for the production and amusement of those who set above them. These people actually thought they were going to create this here in the United States. They were lied to. But here's the problem. The actual entity, the group, the power that subverted them many, many years ago, decades ago, back in the 60s, and put forward their philosophy that the United States would fall not from a single shot, but from within. And how would they do that? When Khrushchev slammed his shoe down at the United Nations and declared that the United States would fall without one shot. What did he mean by that? How could that be? Well, I'll tell you how it could be. because they infiltrated psychologically into groups of individuals. They infiltrated and teach this radical philosophy of communism, and that the Republic of the United States was an evil thing. That the freedom that the people in the United States had was a dangerous thing, and people weren't smart enough to make their own decisions, weren't smart enough to live free, that they needed to be controlled, because that's what communism did. Man, old world communism in the Soviet Union was not a good thing. Was not a good thing. My God, they went in, they took over the farms, they starved people, they destroyed things. By running things by big government and having full control by the big government is not a good thing. It doesn't work. Oh, it may work for a while, but it always fails. You know, I talk about historical replication. Go back century after century after century after century and find systems like that where they tried to set it up where the centralized government ran everything and controlled everything. Failure. Not one failure, not two. Countless, over and over and over through the centuries. Look at the Soviet Union. The very system, the Soviet Union and that communism of the Soviet Union that failed when Reagan was president and the wall fell. That very failed system is what fueled this radicalism. And the thing about it is this radicalism through Bill Ayers, the Weather Underground, the radicalized Black Panthers, all these groups that wanted to take over and destroy the United States, the philosophy that they took up is that they would do it from within. Now, how do you do it from within? Well, to do it from within, you got to get within. Okay. Pretty straightforward there. What's that mean? Well, if you're going to take the government over from within, you have to be part of the government. You have to get elected. But it's more than that. The people, the people of the United States had ideals, they had moral standards, they had a way of life. We had a way of life here in this nation that would resist that. So they realized they couldn't just take over positions of government through deception, through voter fraud, through whatever, and get into these positions and change the laws, because the people themselves, the citizens of this nation, would not accept it. So what to do? What's a young radical communist infiltrator to do? Oh, that's right. We have to change the way the population looks at things. Well, how can you do that? How can you do something like that? Oh, I know what. How about get into the position of teaching? How about taking over the education system? How about whenever young people are at an age where they respect teachers, leaders, and college professors that they learn from, infiltrate that, get into the colleges, get into the schools, change the way of thought. Take what's good and turn it into bad. Take what's up and turn it down. Totally pervert the entire moral system of the United States. That is what's happened. That is why we have seen the radicalization of the universities. That is why we have seen the hotbed of radicalization and violence and everything coming out of the universities. And that's why we have seen the inclusion and the introduction of what was known as Common Core, which they're doing away with right now, thank God, into the schools. They wanted to, and they've been pretty successful for the most part, because you have some young people right now who are not thinking right. They are not thinking right. I'm telling you. You know, I'm a real open person. You know, I've been in the military, special operations. I played music. I've had a very, how can I say this? I've had a very interesting life. I've done a lot of things with a lot of viewpoints, and I have a very open mind. I'm open to all kinds of things. And being so and not being completely biased to things, I can see when things are totally manipulated and people's minds have been messed with. And they attempted to do this. They were becoming very successful with this. They infiltrated the universities, the schools, high schools, elementary schools, and some of the religious organizations, without a doubt. And they almost had it. And we have a real problem here in this nation and the world, all over the world, because this is the worldwide phenomenon that we're looking at, where they're changing things. I mean, what they have done to nations, what they have done to people groups is crazy. Crazy. You have nations in Europe right now where you have immigrants who came in that flooded the nation, and crazy things have happened. They've made people in some of these countries move out of their houses that they own and apartments that they rent. They've had for years. They had contracts to make way for the new people coming in, who came in and totally trashed the place and demanded all kinds of stuff. You have nations, Sweden is big on this right now, where rapes are happening. The rape incidents in Sweden have gone up like 500%. But here's the weird thing. There are incidents where women report rape, sometimes gang rape, by so-called Muslim refugees. And guess what the outcome is? The women who report it get in trouble. They have actually been fined. They have called it's racism if they bring this up. And the men walk free. This is a type of insanity where up is down and down is up that is becoming global. But how do they do this? Back to our topic this evening, Operation Mockingbird. This is how this is done. And again, this isn't specific just to the United States. Did it start here? No. Like I said, 5th century BC, Sun Tzu's The Art of War, warfare, all warfare is based upon deception. And so when they have a war going on for people's minds, because if you change the minds of people, you can change the population, you can change how people think, then you can be victorious or you can get an edge. Now, let's get back into the topic at hand. Operation Mockingbird. What exactly is this? So, like I said, some of our listeners are very familiar with this. Maybe some of you are not. Let me just read some things here, some notes, stuff I have for clarity so everyone understands. Operation Mockingbird. Operation Mockingbird was an alleged, no, not alleged, it was proven, large-scale program of the United States Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA, that began in the early 1950s and attempted successfully to manipulate news media for propaganda purposes. Really? Say it isn't so. It funded student and cultural organizations and magazines as front organizations. Whoa. Backtrack here. What was I just saying? It funded student and cultural organizations and magazines as front organizations. According to the writer Deborah Davis, Mockingbird recruited leading American journalists into propaganda network and oversaw the operations of front groups. CIA support of front groups was exposed in 1967. Ramparts magazine, reported by the National Student Association, received funding from the CIA, and that was in the 60s. In the 1970s, congressional investigation and reports also revealed the agency connections with journalists and civic groups. None of these reports, however, mentions an Operation Mockingbird controlling or supporting these activities. Of course it doesn't. They're covering it up. Why, who would report it? The media? Oh, you mean the media that Operation Mockingbird actually took over? Yeah, according to writer Deborah Davis, Mockingbird recruited leading American journalists into propaganda network and oversaw the operations of front groups. CIA's support of these front groups, which had been exposed, led to congressional investigations and reports which also revealed agency connections with journalists and other civic groups. Indeed. A Project Mockingbird is mentioned in the CIA Family Jewels report, compiled in the mid-1970s. So it was actually in the Project Mockingbird is actually mentioned in the CIA reports. According to the declassified version of the report released in 2007, Project Mockingbird involved wiretapping of 2 American journalists for several months in the early 60s, plus more. You know, the history of this goes into that CIA ran Operation Mockingbird, and there have been many journalists who reported on this. They kind of broke ranks. In 1951, Alan Dulles persuaded Cord Meyer to join the CIA. This is where this all started, okay? According to Deborah Davis, Meyer became Mockingbird's principal operative, and this was Alan Dulles in 51. Maybe you've flown out of Dulles Airport. Maybe you've been in one of the company places before. After 1953, the media network was overseen by CIA Director Alan Dulles, which at that time, Operation Mockingbird had major influence over 20, and this is again, 1953, people. Look how many years ago this was, 1953. Most of our listeners listening right now were not even alive then. Some of you are. I know we have some listeners who were alive at that time. So in 1953, they were reported to have major influence over 25 newspapers and wire agencies. The usual modus operandi was to place reports developed by the CIA provided intelligence with cooperating or unwitting reporters. These reports would be repeated or cited by the recipient reporters and would then in turn be cited through the media wire services. Right? Okay. I'm going to stop right there just for a moment. This can go on. But Operation Mockingbird, what is a mockingbird? What does a mockingbird do? A mockingbird is a bird that will repeat the sound of another bird, or sometimes sounds they hear in the environment in cities or whatever, and they will mock the sound. That's why they're called a mockingbird. They hear something, they repeat something. And thus, the title of the program, Operation Mockingbird. This was in 1953, we're talking about. This never went away. This is ongoing. I'm going to talk about this evening. You have probably seen, have you ever seen some of the videos? I know Lake has posted them over on Going Global East Meets West. And I think there were some comedians who put these out because they thought they were funny. Ha, 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 ha. And what it was clips of videos where you would see news cast all around the United States. And it would be different newscasters, a man, a woman, 2 men, 2 women, whatever. And it would be on a particular evening, and they would be talking about a topic, and they would all say the exact same thing. I know you've seen these videos. If you haven't, you can search them out where all the media says the same thing. And I mean dozens or hundreds of them all over this nation. And again, I said this is global. And you would have the man say something, the woman say something, and they would go back and forth. And once you see these and watch these videos of dozens or hundreds of people saying the exact same thing, reporting the exact same story with the same inflection, a little bit of difference, that's Operation Mockingbird, people. That's evidence that Mockingbird is happening right now. It never went away, and it is intensifying because we are at war right now. The war of truth. The war of truth. And Mockingbird is in full effect. It never went away. It's getting stronger. You can witness this any day. Here's the thing. This is the reason I'm bringing this up this evening, is because a full explanation of how Operation Mockingbird works. I don't think I've ever heard anybody really give the psyops, the psychological mechanics of how this is effective. Okay, we're laying the groundwork right now in all this, talking about the history of Mockingbird, and again, the evidence that Mockingbird is happening, still happening. I'll give it to you here in a moment. And it is no, question that talking points go out to the media. Where do these come from? When you see these films where you see these news agencies saying the exact same thing, the exact same way, about the exact same story all over the country, and they're supposed to be like these independent reporters, Channel 9, Channel 5, Channel 22, whatever your little local channel is. I don't care if you live in Podunkville, or major megalopolis, big city, big shot. It's all the same. Down in Calville, where the hot news of the weekend is what's happening with the cattle, and up in Manhattan, where it's all shining, or out in California, the news is the same. Yeah, you have some variations here and there, and there are some good ones. I'm going to point out a really good one here this evening this evening. I'm going to point that out before this program's over. Other than Phoenix Rising Radio, you get the truth there. And Truth Frequency Radio, with all the great hosts that we have here at TFR. Truth, hello, Truth Frequency. I'm going to give some evidence of this. We're going to talk more when we come back from break on the other side of the hour about Project Mockingbird. And I'm going to give you some evidence of how this has happened in recent history and to what effect. I think you'd be shocked if you actually knew. But this is ongoing right now, and this is information that you need. You need to navigate this second American Revolution of information that's happening, the meme war, if you will, the truth war, the fake news war, this psychological battle in this Plato's man cave that people are locked into these days, of the flat screen TV and the flickering images, booga, booga, booga. Yeah, I think you'll be surprised. And again, the question that I posed at the beginning of this program tonight, are you a tool of the deep state? Serious question with serious implications. But there's a solution. It's an easy solution. I think you'll be surprised at the answer. But we'll get into the depths of this and talk more about this when we return from this break. Don't go away. Important info tonight. We'll be right back.
Truth Frequency Radio is your number one source for
You are now tuned into the Truth Frequency.
your protection from deception. This is Truth Frequency Radio.
Welcome to Phoenix Rising Radio. Now is the time to lift your mind higher. Now is the time to rise above. I am your host, Phoenix, and welcome to tonight's broadcast. Welcome back to the second hour of Phoenix Rising Radio here this evening on Truth Frequency Radio, where truth is premier. Are we Operation Mockingbird? No, we're not. Does it have its influence there sometimes? It has it everywhere, and we'll talk about that more in just a moment. But I want to remind everyone, speaking of truth, I want to invite you to go to truthiswellness.com. It's pretty easy to remember. Truthiswellness.com. And you will see at truthiswellness.com, it's an alternative blog that's set up, a news site for Going Global East Meets West. Like, she has it set up there. It's a Going Global health and wellness site. And the interesting thing is you will see a free ebook that you can get there about vitality, and it was written by Bob Gilpatrick of Boomers Forever Young. You click on that and you can get your free copy of the ebook. It will be delivered right to your email, free of charge, just by signing up for it. And it is a really good book with a lot of good information covering the basic things about health. It has some good recipes in it. It has all the basics about good vital living and vitality, which is so important. We're talking about truth here. We're talking about the revolution. Do you not want to be your best during the Second American Revolution? To be strong, to be healthy, to be happy. Because it doesn't matter what you have in this life. I don't care what kind of toys you have, what type of wealth you have, whatever you have. If you do not have your wellness, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. No matter what age you are, you've got to be your best. You have to have that edge. You have to have that strength, and to be the best that you can be for you and for those whom you love. And to do so, find out how. Click on your free ebook that you can get over at truthiswellness.com. Be sure and check that out. Good stuff. Anyway, back into tonight's topic, Project Mockingbird. Project Mockingbird. You know, even those started back in the 50s, like I was saying, this is ongoing. This is ongoing. Let me read some bullet points about this. CIA's Project Mockingbird is a long-recognized keystone project among researchers, pointing to the agency's clear interest in and relationship to major U.S. news media. And again, Mockingbird grew out of CIA's forerunner, the Office of Strategic Services, OSS, in 1942. 1942, which during World War II had established a network of journalists and psychological warfare experts operating primarily where? In the European theater. Radio Free America. Oh, yeah. Many of the relationships forged under OSS auspices were carried over into the post-war era through a State Department-run organization called the Office of Policy Coordination. Sounds nice, right? Yeah, the Office of Policy Coordination. That was overseen by OSS staffer Frank Wisner. The OPC became the fastest growing unit within the nascent CIA, rising in personnel from 302 in 1949 to 2,812 in 1952, along with 3,142 overseas contract personnel in the same period. This is back in the 40s, people, in the 50s. In the same period, the budget rose from 4.7 million to 82 million. Okay, stop right there. $82 million in 1952. That's staggering. That's equivalent to like billions of dollars. That's how much importance was placed on this. Now, why? Why was so much importance placed on psychological operations in the media by the CIA? Oh, let's go back to the 5th century BC Art of War by Sun Tzu. All warfare is based upon deception. You get it? This is sound warfare. This is what they knew was sound warfare. These people were following back in the 40s and 50s the art of war. Well-known tactics and historically proven through historical replication successful techniques for centuries, which is a good thing when you're trying to battle an enemy that's trying to harm your nation. But what happens is whenever the tools of warfare and these techniques and these programs are turned against the very nation from which they came. When you have people, and you may say, well, Phoenix, how can that be? If the psychological operations that were set forward by the CIA to help the United States and to protect freedom, how can these things be bad? Well, let's go back to what I was saying earlier about the days of the USSR and the Stalinistic communist regime of the former Soviet Union. And Khrushchev saying that that the United States would fall without a single bullet being fired. It would fall from within. When you have radicals that take the very power that a nation has built up and they use that power against the nation itself, that's when it becomes a dangerous thing. When you have intelligence agencies that take the very strength and power of this nation or any nation and turn it against its own people, its own systems, and its own government, that's where it becomes dangerous. I am not saying that the initial launch of Project Mockingbird and what their intentions were was an evil thing. I'm not saying that at all. Because more than likely it wasn't. More than likely it was being done to prevent the destruction of freedom. But what I'm saying is that these things have been subverted, like Khrushchev said, from within. Infiltration. There's a long history on all of this. You know, we had former CIA Director of Central Intelligence, Richard Helms, was recruited out of the press corps. Out of the press corps. So he was in the press corps, Richard Helms. He wasn't, he wasn't a military guy. He wasn't a government guy. He was in the press. And so he was actually recruited out of the press corps by his own supervisor at UPI, United Press International, Berlin Bureau, to join OSS's fledgling, quote, black propaganda program. And he was told, Helms' bosses said, "You're natural." And so Richard Helms took over this entire operation of Operation Mockingbird. And Wisner tapped, not Wisner. I guess Wisner was his boss. And he also tapped Marshall Plan funds. Marshall Plan, we've talked about this, and all the billions of dollars that went into the Marshall Plan. They actually grabbed some of that money to pay for his division's early exploits. And that money that went to his branch, he referred to as, quote, candy. They snagged some candy, said we couldn't even spend it all. CIA agent Gilbert Greenway recalled. He said, I remember once meeting with Wisner and the comptroller. He said, my God, how can we spend that? Because there was so much money. And he said, there are no limits, and nobody had to account for it. It was amazing. So the funding of all this and the real seed money for the CIA, Operation Mockingbird, and all this came from the Marshall Plan. That's where the money came from. It was unallocated candy. Now, we have seen some of this where these top secret propaganda assets, the inventory, have been funded, anew, probably from some of the missing Gulf War money, the missing Pentagon money, the monies that went into the Gulf War fight, and all of these trillions of dollars went into this new effort by Operation Mockingbird. Now, Wisner, he maintained top secret propaganda assets inventory. It was better known as Wisner's Wurlitzer. It was a virtual Rolodex of over, dig this, now listen, 800 news and information entities, which were pre-prepared to play whatever tune Wisner chose. That's why they called Wisner's Wurlitzer. 800. The network included journalists, columnists, book publishers, editors, entire organizations, such as, and I just mentioned this a minute ago, Radio Free Europe, and stingers across multiple news organizations. A few years after Wisner's operation was up and running, he owned respected members of the New York Times, sound familiar? Newsweek, CBS, and other communication vehicles, plus stringers 400 to 600 in all, according to some CIA analysts. Now, these psychological operations that were ongoing and continue to be ongoing, it's a mass operation. And this funds the elite perspectives. Now, this is a deep rabbit hole that we can get into. And they have funded secretly, the CIA, starting back in the 50s and continuing on, numerous foreign press services, periodicals, newspapers, etc. And it goes on and on. This is huge. And Time, Newsweek, they are big, and they are close ties with the CIA. The New York Times has been mentioned. There's many others. And this is not a secret. I will remind you that recently it came out through some research that on CNN, and CNN's a big one. What is the guy's name? I can see him right now. Gloria Vanderbilt's son. His name escapes me right now. He actually went as a CIA intern for 2 summers, and he's at CNN right now, and he's a big CIA contributor. He's part of Project Mockingbird, and we can see this over and over and over in things that come out in the media. Now, okay, I don't want to get too distracted here. Hold on one second. His name escapes me. I can see his face. Okay, hold on. Let me check this out. I just typed in as a search thing, CNN fake news. I know his face will come up here. Hang on, all I have to do is hit images. CNN fake news. Yeah, Wolf. Yeah, your Wolf Blitzer, he's part of it. Here we go. Who's this? Bang. Yeah, CNN, the highly anticipated. This was with the fake news things. And this is what brings me into this. The fake news that's happening right now. This is more than fake news. This is warfare. This is psychological warfare that people are under right now. And Trump just put out his CNN fake news thing. And, we've seen this over and over where they falsely put out different stories, different alleged news items, and they're not true. And these will come out through multiple organizations. It'll come out on CNN. It will come out on MSNBC, New York Times, Newsweek Times, and others. There's so many, I can't even name them all. And these all come out like clockwork. Now, how can this be? And it's become almost frantic and frenzied where this fake news comes out. And, I can give you instance after instance of this fake news. And why is this happening? Well, what happened was Donald Trump became president. Donald Trump became president, and it totally overthrew their paradigm. And the fake news fervor picked up to such a heat that has become almost ridiculous. But it's not ridiculous to like half the nation, because half the people in the United States and the world are victims of this stuff. And I say victims because that's what it is. If it's warfare and you get harmed by an act of war, you are a victim. And becoming harmed or a victim in warfare doesn't mean you've been shot necessarily. That qualifies 100%, or shrapnel or displaced. You could actually be a victim of warfare by believing something that's not true. Because when you believe something that's not true, there's been a lie that has been intentionally put out, you have been taken advantage of. You have been manipulated. You have become a victim. And this victimization and the power that they have to harm people, there's a goal behind this. They're trying to move an agenda. They're trying to deceive people. They're trying to make people believe things that aren't true, because they're trying to gain the hearts and minds of men and women, not only in the United States, but in the world. And they will lie, they will lie, they will lie. And they will stand up like in a position of authority, and they will tell these lies over and over and over with conviction, looking right in the camera. And they know it's a lie. Why would they do that? You ask. Why? How could someone do that? Money. They get paid for it. They get paid for it. They get paid for it in big ways. The people at the head of these media organizations who do this, they get highly rewarded financially. Their families live well. Their children go to the best schools. They're invited to all the fancy parties. Their spouses have the best of everything. They live the good life. So they do it at a financial gain. Very few of them do it at a moral standing. Some do, radicalized, whatever, but some just do it for the money. And they know it's not true. If you pull them to the side and ask them, they all know it's not true. To them, they think they're doing like a service. Like that it's their job to lie to you. That's how good this is. Now, think about this. Unlimited money, missing money from the Pentagon. People talk about black budget projects. Hello, Project Mockingbird. You talk about a deep hole of money. How do you think some of these newscasters make millions of dollars a year? and live in multi-million-dollar homes and are, jet set all around the world. When all they do is just set up and they lie to everybody. How could that be? Where does that money come from? A lot of it comes from sponsors, etc. Those people manipulating people. But there's other monies that are injected into this. People are paid to do this. That Fusion GPS dossier, the fake dossier? This is all coming to light. Journalists were paid. Journalists. And this is going to come out. There are people at CNN, people at MSNBC. There are people at certain newspapers that actually received financial compensation to put out news that was not true. And this is going to come to light in a big way. And what's happening right now, the deep state is being challenged by the people and by Trump. This isn't Republican. This isn't Democrat. This is something bigger. You got to remember that Donald J. Trump was a Democrat all of his life. He was a liberal Democrat, people. He was friends with the Clintons. He gave money to Democrats. His father was a Democrat. He's from New York City. He was a liberal Democrat all of his life. And all of a sudden he changed Republican and ran, and everybody freaked out. The Republican establishment hates him. The Democrat establishment hates him. They did everything they could to stop him. Why? I will guarantee you it's not because he needed the money. You go look at some of the old interviews that he did. He talked about it. He was worried about this country. I'll tell you right now, basically what happened was Donald J. Trump was approached by some people who care about this country, military people, and said, we need help. We need to do something because it's gotten totally out of control. And it was almost over the edge. I will guarantee you that if Hillary Clinton would have taken the position of the president of the United States, you would not be happy right now. Things would not be good. Things would not be good. You could think like the Hunger Games. That's where this was going. You would have the few, the elite, in charge of everything, and your freedoms would be gone. Your hopes would be gone. It would have been the last death nail of this country, this nation, this republic. When Barack Obama, there was a famous, like the last thing he did, his last, what they call it, the press, the dinner where they do like this, the White House press dinner, and they would poke fun at people and joke, and all the media was there. Ah, ha, ha, ha. Remember him saying the death of the republic never looked so good? And everyone cheered. You think that was a joke? Why would a president talk about the death of the republic and then go into mocking candidate Donald Trump? Candidate at that time. It's going to come out here in the near future about this meeting, this secret meeting that happened. They call it the Secret Society of the FBI and other individuals, and how they colluded against the elected president of the United States and their insurance policy. You're going to see this play out. We're going to talk more about this because I'm pretty sure I have figured out what they're going to try to do, but they're not going to be successful. But one of the biggest tools they have in this bloodless war right now, where no shots are being fired, is the media. Project Mockingbird. That's what the deep state's using right now. This is the meme war. This is the information war. This is a war that's going on right now. And if you want freedom and you believe in freedom and you're a truth seeker, you need to know and you need to think about it. Are you being used by the deep state? Has the deep state used you? I know it's an outrageous question. You're probably like, yeah, not me. Well, hang on till we come back. In this last segment, I'm going to get to the point of what I'm saying. And the question I have, are you being used by the deep state? Right.
Real people, real radio.
Initiating the truth frequency.
This is Truth Frequency Radio.
There's something happening here, but what it is ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there, telling me I got to beware. I think it's time we stop, children. What's that sound? Everybody look what's going down.
And we're back. Last segment here. What is going down? This is what's going down. Let me do it by the numbers. Number one, we have established, confirmed. You can do more research because 2 hours barely scratches the surface of Operation Mockingbird, which began in the 40s during World War II. Received massive amounts of money from the monies that went in to rebuild Europe. Marshall Plan, what they called candy money for the CIA. Again, it was established for good reason. Fact number two, the media, newspapers, television, radio, deeply influenced, infiltrated by the CIA and Operation Mockingbird. Established fact number three, group of individuals within the United States who were influenced highly by former communist forces of the Soviet Union and communist Red China, vowed to achieve the goal laid out by Khrushchev that the United States would fall without a shot being fired. It would fall from within. It has been established that what they have done, Bill Ayers and the Weather Underground, Bill Ayers, who was communist radical, who vowed to destroy the United States and take it over, who was the mentor of Barack Hussein Obama. This has been established. This isn't speculation. This is known. And others. It has been established and known that news organizations, of course, have been taken over, and also universities, areas of higher learning, to influence the thought and sociological belief systems of the youth, to turn the tide. And by infiltrating the political system, being elected Trojan horse style into positions of government. So the Khrushchev's vision of the nation falling from within without one shot would be fulfilled. And again, to get a summary of what this would look like, check out the Hunger Games. That's what they were going for. Now, let's get to the point. What was I talking about this evening? And what am I discussing when I pose the question, are you a tool of the deep state? And here is where it gets interesting. Okay. Project Mockingbird, which is ongoing right now, and we see evidence of this. Oh, an interesting article before I get into exactly what I'm going to say this evening. One good example is CNN. And an article I had heard back during the Gulf War that, thousands of United States Army psychological individuals were embedded in CNN and other news organizations. They pretty much scrub that. I mean, they do a good job scrubbing the internet, so that info is hard to find now, but I'll tell you it's true. There was an article that came out in FAIR. You can find this by, you can search FAIR challenging media bias since 1986. Anyway, it was a report back in March 27, 2000, that said, why were government propaganda experts working on news at CNN? Reports in the Dutch newspaper Trouw, 2/21/2000, and France's intelligence newsletter of 2/17/2000 have revealed that several officers from the U.S. Army's 4th Psychological Operations, PSYOPs, group of Fort Bragg, been to Bragg, worked in the news division at CNN's Atlanta headquarters last year, starting in the final days of when? The Kosovo War. Yeah. In the U.S. media, so far, only Alexander Cockburn, columnist for The Nation and co-editor of the newsletter Counterpunch, has picked up on the story. Story is disturbing. In the 1980s, officers from the 4th Army PSYOPs group staffed the National Security Council's Office of Public Diplomacy, OPD. We talked about that earlier. A shadowy government propaganda agency that planted stories in the U.S. media supporting the Reagan administration's Central American policies. Senior U.S. official described OPD as a vast psychological warfare operation of the kind the military conducts to influence a population in enemy territory. But this was done here in the United States. An investigation by the Congressional General Accounting Office found that OPD had engaged in prohibited covert propaganda activities within the United States, and that the office was soon shut down as a result of the Iran-Contra investigations. But the 4th PSYOPs group still operates. Oh, yeah, they do. CNN has always maintained a close relationship with the Pentagon. Getting access to top military officials is necessary for a network that stakes its reputation on being the first on the ground during wars and other military operations. But this was back in the year 2000. 17 years later, 18 years later, this has progressed into something even greater, okay? Especially when you have organizations that are taken over from within. Let's say that CNN was operating on this paradigm and with, thousands of PSYOP people working, and we know this has been established. This isn't speculation. Let's say that somebody got control of those organizations and these operations who had in mind that they wanted to basically change this country. And when I say change this country, change this nation, I mean subvert the Constitution of the United States. To subvert the Constitution of the United States and the Bill of Rights. And that's what we see happening. That's what we saw was attempted. And they continue on because we're at this war right now. There is a group that's been empowered, if you will, through the will of the people. And that was the election of President Donald J. Trump, who, again, I'll remind you, had been a liberal Democrat all of his life. And there's such opposition to this, and there's such a battle going on right now, this fake Russian dossier thing going on, all this fake news that's going on. And I mean, there's so much evidence of the reality of this. So let's get down to this. What am I talking about? When I talk about, are you potentially a tool of the deep state? What do I mean by that? You, my listeners. How could you be a tool of the deep state? If you listen to Phoenix Rising Radio and you listen to Truth Frequency Radio, you're like, no, man, I'm looking for the truth. Where that truth may be. The truth is out there, all X-Files. Mueller and Scully, the truth is out there. Where is that truth? And you're seeking for the truth. And you think you've escaped from Plato's man cave, and you're no longer, influenced by that. Hopefully that's true. Hopefully you have a mind right now that you are objectively looking at things and critically thinking about things. Critical thought. Critically thinking. But here's the problem we have, and this is what I'm talking about and the point I'm getting at. Project Mockingbird. Okay, we've seen the videos. If you haven't, I hope you search them. How Jimmy Kimmel, I think, or a couple people, I don't know if it's him, who did these, and showing all the different news agencies saying the same thing on the same night about the same story. Hundreds, thousands, doing these. It's funny. Everybody laughed. Ha, 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 ha. And it's not funny. Many a truth in jest. It's evidence of Project Mockingbird. But we see this right now with the talking points that go out through what's called the mainstream media. And the whole thing about Mockingbird is like you have an intelligence agency who's trying to control things in warfare, put out the talking points. You say this like this with this inflection. And what happens is the Mockingbird media, they all mock it. Mock, 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 mock. They say whatever they're told. And it goes out everywhere. And like I said, these Mockingbird media things are totally infiltrated. I mean, it goes out to Cowtown, Podunk Cowtown, population 104. Their local news will pick up on these stories. Or the biggest metropolitan area, no matter where, no matter what the demographic, it goes out there. And some people would say, okay, yeah, I know better than that, though. But see, here is how the Project Mockingbird works and the whole concept of Mockingbird. A lot of people think that's it, that it just goes to the media. No, the media is the starting point of the entire kickoff of the psychological operation of Project Mockingbird. The effectiveness of Mockingbird, as the name implies, is that it's mocked. What happens is people unknowingly, like I said, victims of this psychological warfare, they hear this. They hear this presented in such a professional way. And, this stuff comes in the midst of things that they know are very true. They throw in the weather report, it was hot today and it'll be raining tomorrow. And the local sports team did this. And everybody knows this is true. Yep, I went out today. I got wet. Oh, boy, it looks like rain tomorrow. Oh, yeah, that's true. Oh, yeah, our local sports team, they lost or they won and they're doing good. Or, oh, yeah, this local thing happened. And then what they'll do is they'll inject this other stuff. So what happens is they'll inject a lie in the middle of many truths that you can confirm. Yep, it rained today. Yep, it's going to snow tomorrow. Yep, it's hot. It's cold. The team won, the team lost. And all of a sudden, they'll put in some other news. And what happens many times, people hear this, and what they do, what do people do? They repeat it. Oh, man, did you hear this? Mock, mock, mock. And they'll tell a story that's totally not true to their coworkers or family member, and they'll be like, oh, my God, I didn't see that. Where did you hear that? Oh, I heard that on the news. Really? And then what happens, like mockingbirds do, the people that they told, they'll say, yeah, man, did you hear about this? What? I never heard that. Where did you hear that? Oh, I heard it from such and such. I heard it from my doctor. Really? You heard it from your doctor? Oh, my God. Oh, you heard it from your college professor? Oh, my God. Oh, yeah. And so what happens is this lie will be repeated from one person to the next person to the next person, like a mockingbird. Mock, mock, mock. They don't check it out. A mockingbird doesn't check the validity of a sound, where the sound came from, what the sound means. The mockingbird just mocks it. Mock, 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 especially if it's sensational. It's something, that's outrageous, or it follows their political or intellectual views. They'll be quick to say it. They'll actually get on the phone. Oh my God, did you read this? They'll forward stories. Bang. They will forward it. They'll hit it. They'll retweet it. They'll do this. And this stuff goes out there. And the power of the Project Mockingbird is, number one, they filter this stuff through agencies that, are supposed to be reputable, that people trust. And again, they do this by mixing it with truth, weather, sports, accidents, realities, things that earth changes, things that people see, like, oh my God. And then with the same intensity and the same, demeanor, they will interject something that's not true. And people are like, oh my God. Because, yeah, I know California's on fire. Oh my God, I know there was just an earthquake over in this place. Oh my God, I know this sports team just lost. So, oh my God, what they just said, it must be true too. And the people who are telling these lies, they know it's not true. They've been told to say this. That's their job. They know it. They get paid for it, big money. And what happens is people listen to this stuff and they repeat it. Oh my God, did you hear this? Oh my God, let me send that out on a text. And people like mockingbirds, and this is the power of Project Mockingbird, and what I'm asking you, are you a tool of the deep state? Because the deep state uses Project Mockingbird to put false information out, but it doesn't end at the end of the broadcast. When you turn your TV off or, click off and go to a different browser or a different site on your web, when you're cruising the net, it doesn't end there. That's just the beginning. That's the jump off point. The power of Project Mockingbird is the people. It's the population. It's the human essence to this, where the mockingbird lie goes out and it gets repeated by this mockingbird, that mockingbird, mock, 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 mock. Next thing you know, you have school teachers standing up and telling their students, oh my God, did you hear this? And oh no, that's not the way it is because I heard this. And nobody checks anything. Like a stupid mockingbird, like a brainless bird brain, they just hear a sound, tweet, tweet, tweet. They're like, oh, tweet, tweet, tweet. And then they repeat it. And this is what's required. We have to check what's going on and what's true. And this is going to require two things. Number one, it's going to require people to not immediately repeat something, no matter what. If it appears bad to you, good to you, check the sources. And when you have someone that tells you something that you question, if a family member, a loved one, someone at work, an acquaintance walks up to you, oh my God, did you hear this outrageous thing? Listen to it and say, well, where did you hear that? And then ask them, well, how do you know that's true? If you don't know the validity of this. Because they are professionally doing this. They're professionally doing this. They're doing everything they can right now, the deep state, to stop the release of the truth, because we are on the verge in this nation here in the United States of some major truths dropping. The deep state is going to be exposed. We basically, and I touched upon this on Tuesday, we have a coup, an attempted coup that happened here in the United States. We had a group of individuals in high levels of government and intelligence agencies who used the power of those intelligence agencies and their positions in government to unlawfully and unconstitutionally subvert the government system of this nation. We are now. I haven't heard it used this way yet, but we're potentially looking at sedition and possibly treason. when you have a group of individuals who rise up, operate outside the law, and do illegal things, they leak classified information, felony, when they collude to lie about and put false information about to remove and possibly influence an election or remove a duly elected person, that's sedition. And if it was done on a planned way, possibly treason. These are serious things. So they're doing everything they can at this time through Operation Mockingbird to put out as much false information as possible. Good example. Let me give you a really good example. One of the big ones that just popped up recently. You may have heard this. You may have heard someone who Mockingbird style repeated this or tweeted this to you, or you saw it in the news recently. There was a story out there that was a porn star. I believe her name was Stormy Daniels. Her name is Stormy Daniels, porn star. And the story was that she had been paid off. She'd had sex with Donald J. Trump, and Donald J. Trump's lawyers during the campaign paid her off huge amount of money to be quiet, and paid her off, and he was doing this. And not only that, but when President Trump went to Davos, Switzerland, which he's at right now, doing a really stellar job, by the way, that his wife, Milena, she refused to go with him because of this horrible story about this Stormy Daniels and this sexual liaison he had with her, and it was all paid off, and their marriage is on the rocks, and she's going to divorce him, and all of this stuff, right? You may have heard that story. It just came out this week again. That story was batted around before. But let me tell you the truth of that. If you would dig to the bottom of that, let me read something here. This came out, it was in the Daily Caller, I believe. And this is why you haven't heard a lot of the big media places saying this. They tried to at one time, but they know they'll get sued, not only by President Trump, but also Stormy Daniels. Let me read this. And this is from, this is this year because they had to release it again. She did it before. An adult film actress who reportedly received a $130,000 payment from Donald Trump's personal attorney shortly before the election has denied all allegations that she had an affair with Trump or received any hush money in order to keep quiet. Trump's personal attorney, Michael Cohen, released a January 10th letter purportedly written by Stormy Daniels, a retired adult film star whose real name is Stephanie Clifford. On Friday, the Wall Street reported that Cohen had paid $130,000 to Clifford in October in 2016 in order to keep her from talking to the media about a consensual sexual encounter that occurred at a celebrity golf tournament in Lake Tahoe. But Stormy Daniels actually had to have a lawyer put something out and contact Trump's lawyer and what's going on? It's all made up. It was not true. The entire story that probably went out to hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people just in the past couple of weeks, the Stormy Daniels story. And it was perpetrated again and pushed again by people through the Mockingbird media that Donald Trump's wife is so upset with him over this that she's not even going to Davos. If you know anybody who told you that story or you heard that story from someone, that person was an unwilling victim of Project Mockingbird. Because anybody who would hear that story and instead of repeat it, say really, and do any type of searching on it at all, just type in Stormy Daniels and that story. The retraction and the evidence that none of it is true will come right up. But people, don't take the time And therefore, they become unwilling tools of the deep state. And I see a lot of this. I hear a lot of this over and over and over. And I tell you what, PSYOPs works. PSYOPs is good. Psychological manipulation of the masses, like I said, starting at the beginning of the program, yeah, you can go back to the 5th century BC, and Sun Tzu talks about it. Question I ask you, are you an unwilling tool of the deep state? I hope you're not. How can you not be? And how can you be a true purveyor and warrior for the truth? Check things out, no matter how salacious or how enticing they are, before you tell other people, before you become a tool of the Mockingbird, Operation Mockingbird, and become a Mockingbird yourself by retweeting something or forwarding an email or telling someone over the phone, oh my God, you'll never believe what I heard about whoever. Check it out. Whichever side. And I'll tell you, all sides, because the truth is the truth and lies are lies. So before you become a willing tool and a reflector of shadows on Plato's man cave wall yourself, and a unwilling participant in Operation Mockingbird, which is ongoing, check the facts. Check the facts yourself. Don't go to a fact-checking site where somebody did it for you. That's psychological operations in itself. Anyway, we could probably use another hour on this. That's it, man. We're out of here. I'll be back on Tuesday. Have a good weekend. Things are changing. And next week, I have a lot to talk about. We're going to talk about the full moon, new moon, blue moon eclipse. Big, powerful things, and a lot of things come to light. Maybe I'll have a special guest. We'll see. Join me on Tuesday, because that'll be the topic then. Good night and God bless.